Now on to
Gabe's Fantasy Corner.
That's
right.
Corner.
That's right. All right, so this is going to be a little bit of a shorter segment today as well. There's only been a couple games played so far. But I'm going to start off with some good old fantasy pickups. The first being a name we already went over earlier today, and his name is Kevin Porter Jr. Chase was fortunate enough to pick him up on his fantasy team before I could.
Yeah, very fortunate.
Yeah. Won't accept any trades. Heartbroken. Anyways, I'll read his stats. This guy is plus 50% owned over the last week. So if he's available in your league somehow, please get him. For me, just do it.
If he's available in your league and you don't have him, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Just go get him.
So over the last two games, now it's a small sample size, but the promise is obvious. He's averaging 20 points, 4 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 steals, and 1.5 blocks, and may single-handedly save Chase's fantasy team. Now, this guy, I think if Oladipo gets traded, he could be an easy middle-round guy for the rest of the year. Now, that's dependent on Oladipo being traded, I think, and I think he will get traded. If he doesn't, I still think he's going to have a good year. It's just not going to be a mid-round value type of year.
I think Oladipo does get traded or released. Mm-hmm. And it's also good to mention that John Wall has been injured almost the whole season. Mm-hmm. He plays about every other game. So he's going to put up good numbers.
Yeah. I like Kevin Porter Jr. All right. Next guy on my list is one Hamidou Diallo, who was recently traded to the Detroit Pistons for Svi Mikhailuk and a second, which is a big asking price.
It's an interesting trade.
It's a random trade.
I guess with the emergence of Lou Dort and Theo Maledon, and I butchered that name, I know, and Ty Jerome, Hamidou became expendable.
Now, I kind of like his fantasy profile. He gets defensive stats. He's a scorer, gets some boards, gets some assists. Not very good from free throw, but he's going to have a lot of opportunity on this team. The guard depth is a little on the shaky side. On the season, he was shooting 48%. He's hurt right now, by the way. But on the season, he's been shooting 48%, 62% from the free throw line, averaging about 12 points with half a three, 5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and a steal and a half a block.
Solid.
I think most of his defensive stats, if he does become a good pickup, will hinge on his defensive stats.
All right. And another thing I wanted to mention about the Pistons, they're looking like they're going to release a lot of players coming up. I don't think Wayne Ellington stays on the team. DeLon Wright might get traded at the deadline. You're looking at a lot of veteran guys that might go. Good thing to mention, Dennis Smith Jr., if you have him right now. Killian Hayes is coming back soon. I believe he's due back within a week or so.
Yeah. He won't be playing above 20 minutes for this
No.
season.
But it's good to mention that Dennis Smith Jr.'s minutes will probably go down. Killian Hayes will get a lot of good looks. But Hamidou will take on a big role for that team.
Yeah. All right, so the next guy I have is another ripple effect from a trade. Jakob Purdle. We were already talking about him being a hot pickup. Now he's 54% owned. He's been owned in plus 6% of leagues this week. Because of the LaMarcus Aldridge trade, Jakob Purdle is now the starting center for the Spurs. I really like his defensive upside. Over the last month, he was averaging a steal and 2 blocks with 9 boards and almost 2.5 assists, 8 points, and he was shooting 64% from the field. And an increased, if you will believe this, an increased percentage of 50% at the line.
Oh, my God.
So if you're taking free throws, I think Jakob Purtle's definitely your guy. I think he's a guy who can average north of two blocks. Any thoughts on Jakob Purtle?
I think Jakob Purtle is solid. We went over him last week, a little bit of what he does. Now with Aldridge out, he's getting all the run.
Yeah.
I don't think they have another big that's going to soak up any of his minutes.
I do like him for this season. Next guy, final of the pickups, is going to be Jaden Mcdaniels. Now, Jaden's stat lines haven't been really that great yet, but he does get defensive stats. He has been getting defensive stats in his limited minutes. But This last game that he's played against the Pelicans, he went 8 of 9 from the field for 20 points, 4 threes, 4 boards, 2 steals, and 3 blocks, which is absolutely golden fantasy stat line. And he's averaging a block on the season already, which is amazing considering he's only averaging 5 points and 3 boards. Having that block in there as a small forward, power forward is pretty cool. And, yeah, he's just a young upside guy to look at, especially after the trade deadline if more names are moved because the Timberwolves suck.
Yeah. And he had a big game the other night. I believe 4 threes, 20 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
Solid game. Only thing I can say about Jaden is he's a little inconsistent. I've looked at him earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
But he could be getting run. Anyone on the Timberwolves could be getting run right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what makes these lower-end teams valuable right now.
Yeah.
Especially for fantasy.
Okay, now I have 2 sell-high names to go over, and one of them is going to kind of piss you off. But the first one is Kemba Walker. Sell-high Kemba Walker. He's got a lot of name value, and over the last 2 weeks, he's averaging, still not too much, he's averaging 18 points with 3.5 boards and 5.5 assists with under a steal and just under a block for some reason. I don't know. And then over the last month, he's averaging 21 points with around the same stat line, 93% from the line. I just think you can get an inflated return for him based off the fact that his name's Kemba Walker, and that he's starting to put up a little bit more of a respectable stat line. But yeah, I think you can get inflated value for him easy.
And that's what I tried to do. I packaged him in a deal with Wiggins, trying to sell high on both.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good option if you have Walker right now, to try to sell high on him.
Now, my last sell high name, which is probably going to piss you off just a little bit,
oh man,
is Kevin Porter Jr. It is, but I don't want people to get this misconstrued or anything. It's not because he's not going to put up good numbers. People are going to be going crazy off these past 2 games that he's had and the whole narrative that he has surrounding him. He's an enigma right now, and people love that. And I think people could get, inflated return. I'm saying that a lot today. But people could get inflated returns for him. Now, I'm not saying to trade him because he's still a very young guy on a rebuilding team with tons of upside. But if you could get a top 50 guy or a top 40 guy who maybe is playing poorly and maybe Kevin Porter's an add-in, like a sweetener, I would take that 100% of the time. And I feel like it's doable.
Yeah, and I agree with that. The numbers he's putting up right now could be sustainable, but we don't know. He's played 2 games this season.
Averaging a block and a half.
Yeah. It's 2 games. We don't have very much sample size.
Yeah.
And it was something I wanted to hit on. I don't know if you were going to hit on this later, but the G League bubble just ended.
I wasn't going to hit on that, so you can feel free to just spiel on it.
Okay. So the G League bubble just ended. Therefore, all these teams that sent players to the bubble, these players are now coming up.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of guys that put in good minutes now. And most of the guys I picked out were from Thunder and Rockets. Those two teams are trash right now, to say the least. But these guys are getting a lot of run and coming in with confidence now.
Yeah.
And I can see how much their game has changed. So I'm just going to list off a couple guys. Tell me what you think. Okay. Jerome just came out of the G League bubble. Playing solid. I watched him today against the Knicks. Great player. Can really shoot.
Yeah?
Yeah. Great. Next, Alexei Pokashevsky.
Yeah.
He is high risk. Sometimes he looks like he could be a great player in the NBA.
The last 2 games are a perfect example of
yeah.
Great
and
one,
then the next play you'll see what was that? He'll just fall out of bounds or something like that. Or throw a weird rainbow pass all the way across the court. And you're like, what is going on?
Yeah, that's some cool stuff right there.
That is. So Pokashevsky is someone to keep your eye on.
Yeah.
Next guy I got on my list. This is going to be my big one. Moses Brown. Now, I don't know if you followed him at UCLA or in the G League bubble. But in the G League bubble, he was putting up good numbers.
Yeah, he's got a
solid player. Now, one thing to mention. Al Horford sits out all back-to-backs.
Mm-hmm.
So Al Horford played today. They're going to play tomorrow. Moses Brown is most likely going to start at center.
Most of these guys are all OKC guys, too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Most of these guys are OKC and Rockets guys I'm going to get to. But Moses Brown could find himself in a starting role for a good portion of the games this season. Now, the other night, not today, I believe it was the other night, he got 12 boards and 2 blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Solid numbers. Today, I think he had like 10 points, 9 rebounds, a block. I almost guarantee you tomorrow, he'll give you 12 boards and 2 blocks.
Mm-hmm.
He will be soaking up so many minutes at center, especially when they're light in that area. You're looking at the other options for OKC centers. It's like Kenrich Williams, who's more of an ISO player. I like him at the 3 or 4. You got Darius Baisley, who's coming off an injury. There's not many options for center, especially when Al Horford sits. So I think Moses Brown is going to be big.
Poku.
All right, next person I'm going to hit on. Justin Patton. I know I talked about him a little bit earlier in the podcast, but he's putting up good numbers while Christian Wood is out. When Christian Wood comes back, will those numbers change? Yes.
I feel like he's going to probably not barely play.
Yeah. But as of right now, he's making good numbers. Kevin Porter somehow finds him every possession. Good numbers, can hit a 3, too. Solid player. And his defensive stats are really good.
Yeah,
don't know him off the top of my head, but I think he's been getting like multiple steals and blocks a game.
Yeah, he's a guy you could definitely use as maybe a streamer for Sunday, as we know that Christian Wood's going to be out until Tuesday. So he would be a good streamer for sure for fantasy.
Yeah. Next guy on my list is KJ Martin, Kenyon Martin Jr.
Yes.
He's solid. The 2 games we've seen from him played really well. Played really well in the bubble. I think my big thing about talking about all these guys from the bubble, there's only so many moments in the season where players will come and you get a chance to pick them up for nothing, right? It's usually the beginning of the season where you test to find out who's going to be good. You see guys like Terry Rozier come out of nowhere, guys like Jordan Clarkson come out of nowhere. Jeremy Grant, you know? Like, these are the guys that pop off at the beginning of the season and you see that. There's usually something towards the end of the season, right after the trade deadline.
Yes, that's my favorite time of the year.
Right around playoff time.
That's my favorite time of the year.
Where random players get shot into lineups. This is new this year because there wasn't a G League bubble before. This is your moment to strike.
Yeah.
And you've got all these guys that have spent the past month and a half in the bubble. And now they're getting NBA minutes.
Yeah.
And for these teams that are watered down due to injury or trade or even just trying to rebuild, all these guys are good options.
I think the next best guy, if Kevin Porter's not available for your team, would be KJ Morton for sure. KJ Martin's stats have been very nice for the Rockets the last 2 games, so he's someone to definitely look at and maybe take a flyer on.
Yeah, and that's about all I wanted to hit on in the G League bubble, guys. Another good note to add is all the players in the G League are no longer in the G League. Season's over. Lakeland Magic won.
I do have one more fantasy name to go over.
Okay, you could go ahead and do that.
Oh, okay. Well, this is another center, what I would consider to be a hub for defensive stats. He's a center. He plays for the Boston Celtics, and his name is Robert Williams Jr.
I love Robert Williams. Loved him since he came out of Texas.
The Time Lord. Now, this guy, over the last month, is averaging 2.3 blocks with 2 assists, 6 rebounds, 8 points, shooting 68% from the field. And basically, it's a waiting game. Brad Stevens said earlier this month that later in the season, Robert Williams is going to be putting up probably 30-plus minutes a game, which I don't know what they're really waiting for. He's clearly better than Tristan Thompson. And, I mean, he's young. It's not like you have to sit him.
All right, so here's what I've seen from watching the games recently. I spent a lot of time watching games just all together. I watched the Celtics game the other night. Robert Williams' IQ is not all the way there yet. He's still young. I believe he's 22, 23.
Yeah.
Still really, really young. His IQ isn't all the way there, which is why Brad Stevens just looks at him and takes him out. But solid players gives you that rim defending that you need. And for a Celtics team that's looking for centers, I think he's the best option, not even picking one up.
Yeah, who would you rather have playing in the game? Robert Williams with his defensive presence or Tristan Thompson?
I'd rather have Robert Williams.
Yeah, me too. So I think it's going to be a matter of time before he starts getting heavier minutes, and once the coach realizes he is the best option at center, I think he's going to have a lot of good fantasy production.
Yeah.
Good guy to look at, have on your watch list.
Yep.
And yeah, that's it for me. That's all I got.
All right. I think that wraps everything up.
All right.
You got anything else to add?
Just show us some love on our Instagram page, which I will start posting on.
All right. Our Instagram page will get together. It's dimes.unlimited.
Dimes.unlimited at Instagram.
At Instagram. Eventually, I know we say this every week. We're going to eventually start a TikTok. We're getting around to it.
We're very busy men.
Very, very busy.
So
Gabe's over here flipping burgers a couple times a
all
week now.
the time. I haven't done it yet, though. But.
We're going to get around to that stuff. Anyway, show us love on YouTube. I think we're going to post this in 3 separate parts. We're going to post the full podcast. We're going to post the fantasy corner. And then we're going to post the basketball reference segment.
Mm-hmm.
These will all be up. Main podcast will be up today. Probably what you're listening to. Other 2 will be up later in the week.
And shout out to Spencer. Give me that Lonzo trade.
Shout out to Spencer and Yuli. I know you guys don't listen to the podcast, but hey.
Give me that Lonzo trade.
All right, and that should be it. This is Chase and Gabe signing out.
I love you too, Jacob. All right, I'll see you guys.
See ya.